Well, what the heck is happening over in Utah? Right now, the leadership there is going to be erecting a massive campus. And this particular campus has the mainstream media and many on the left freaking the heck out, saying this is forced labor. People are going to go there and meet their utter fate. They're going to be locked in there forever. It's, the camps like they used to have for the Japanese internment camps in Nazi Germany. And they're really going nuts over this thing. Well, I've got a huge report to share with you today. I'm going to get to the truth of what is really being erected in Utah. And as with everything on the left, they are blowing things out of proportion and just, trying to make Donald Trump and Republicans look bad and make it look, and just yet another key to their radical left to get them upset with us. I am sick of those on the left. But what's going on in Utah, you guys have to see. Let me take you straight to the source. And I'm going to go right to the source. This is what they are planning on building. This is a homeless campus that they are building in Utah. There's about 1,300 beds on this thing, and they plan to erect it there in Utah. And you could see the picture of it there. They're kind of going across the screen. It's actually massive. This is what they intend to build, but it's got, again, 1,300 units that they're going to have there. But it's embarking on what they're calling a groundbreaking new undertaking, a transformative campus to help those experiencing homelessness to rebuild their lives. Located on about 15.85 acre parcel, and it gives the address there, but it's in Salt Lake City, Utah. The planned facility will provide approximately 1,300 beds, creating a sustainable and transformative solution to address homelessness in Utah. Designed to complement the existing homeless resource centers, shelters, and service providers throughout Utah, the transformative campus is a place where those experiencing homelessness can find help for recovery, for mental health, for healthcare, for employment, for criminal justice assistance. Say some are faced with jail. Well, they can go here as an alternative, right? Those who are homeless, and housing through services and treatments accessible in all in one location. This is more than a campus. It's a turning point for Utah of reimagining hope, said Wayne, the state homeless coordinator. It will further fulfill the identity needed to provide additional beds and treatment in Utah's homeless response, while providing individuals serviced by the campus a transformative path from crisis to stability and ultimately thriving. And here's their mission, vision, and objective, basically to help the homeless in any way, shape, or form. So one has to think, what the hell sounds so bad about that? And why is the left getting their panties in a wad? By the way, anything that Trump or his administration or those who like Trump do, the left goes crazy over it. And this is yet again another one of those things. But before I dive into that, I got to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Lisa Haven Gold at Noble Gold Investments. You see, right now the feds, they're out of options, rate cuts, money printing, balance sheet reversals. They call it policy, but it is really panic, right? Inflation is eating our savings account. The job markets are slowing, and confidence of the dollar is fading very, very fast. For decades, the feds built a house of paper, and now all of that is starting to crumble and burn. That's why smart investors are moving to what's real, and that is tangible gold and silver. And that's why I want to encourage you to do the exact same thing. In order to do that, you can give Noble Gold Investments a call at the number on the screen, 1-877-646-5347. Talk to one of their no-hassle specialists right now, and make sure you give them my name, Lisa Haven, because right now they are giving away up to 10 of these 1-ounce silver holiday coins with any new or qualified account. Or you can also go to lisahavengold.com, fill out this information, click email me my wealth kit, and they'll send you a free wealth kit. But get your hands on some tangible gold and silver and make sure you are diversifying your profile. If you want more information, click the more button or click the link in the description box below. And by the way, there is always a risk to investing. There's never a guarantee. But with that, why exactly does the left have their panties in a wad over this whole thing? Well, I got a document that I want to share with you on this entire thing. And this is also shared on that same website. They link this document there, but it's the Utah Model Guiding Principles to Overcome Homelessness. And it gets into, the fact that they've tried to address homelessness in the past, and it has failed and failed and failed and failed. A lot of people have. If you look what California is doing, which is just giving out more money and free stuff to homeless, the homeless numbers are exploding. In fact, there is a report that shows it increased about 40% over the past few years. And I'm blanking on the actual one that put that out. But here we are, right? This is what this facility seeks to aid. If you have mental health, substance abuse, you're struggling with education or employment, physical health issues, housing, emergency services, social relationships. This is what they're trying to focus on in this center, right? Kind of like the end all I mean, it sounds like great. All right, if we can help these homeless people who many are mentally ill, then this is going to be a great alternative, I think. Now, of course, I'm not going to get into all of this, but it's human-centered, root cause focused, evidence-based, expectation, and results-oriented. And then it goes on to say that some of the system requirements, and this is one thing that the left is having their panties in a wad over. The know-by-name system will track all efforts supporting the individual, such as the state knows what is working and what's not working, and helping individual progress along the pathway to human thriving. All individuals receiving state services beyond first level, low barrier shelter, and basic food will be required to participate in Know by Name. So basically, they're required to participate in whatever services that are offered and being offered there. This is the way that I read it. There's going to be monitoring, there's going to be evaluation, there's going to be learning. There's also going to be a criminal justice offer. Like if some of these people who are on the streets and they're committing crimes, they might say, oh, instead of, going to jail, why don't you come to this service center and you check in and you're required to do some of these services or take part in some of the things that we're doing here. Right. So this is what the left is really, really upset about. In fact, here's what the New York Times says about the entire thing. In Utah, Trump's vision, interesting how they put this, right, for homelessness begins to take shape. Let me start first with this. The Utah effort began before Mr. Trump's return to office. But somehow this is Trump's vision. But anyway, I just thought I would call out the hypocrisy of this article from the very get-go. But here's what they say. The future of homelessness policy. To glimpse the future of homelessness policy in the age of President Trump, consider a 16 acres of scrubby pasture on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, Utah, where the state plans to place as many as 1,300 homeless people in what supporters call a service campus and critics deem a detention camp. State planners say the site, announced last month after a secretive search, will treat addiction and mental illness and provide a humane alternative to the streets, where afflictions often go untreated and people die at alarming rates. Sounds great. You're going to help with addiction and mental illness? Sounds great. They also vow stern measures to move homeless people to the remote site and force many of them to undergo treatment, reflecting a nationwide push by some conservatives for a new approach to homelessness, one embraced and promoted by Trump. Here's the deal. If you check in there, you check in on your own free will, all right? First of all, knowing the requirement is to participate. And you see how they twist the story. But anyway, it goes on to say how they're forcing it, right? And here's how they're saying it's being forced. With outdoor sleeping banned, removal to the edge of town may become the only way that they can avoid jail. In other words, they're saying homelessness is banned basically, in certain areas. Therefore, they're going to feast with going to jail or going to this place. So it's forced. Again, it's not forced. You can abide by the law. If it's banned in certain areas to go in and bed there, go somewhere where it's not banned. Bottom line, they're not above the law. They still have crimes. They're still subject to our rules and regulations. If they don't like the rules or regulations in Utah, go and change the laws, right? But this is being provided as an alternative for those people. You check yourself in. It is what it is. And this is the way. And maybe some of you will disagree with me on it. And here's the deal. I've dealt with the homeless personally, and I have told this story before. My mom and dad used to take in homeless. We had no money as kids, but we'd take in homeless people. We would give them an address, give them a place to stay, and we would give them a job because my dad had the ability to give them a job or help get them a job. They'd get a job, they'd quit, they'd go back out on the streets. I think we had one guy, his name, I'm not going to say his name, But anyway, we had one guy last over a year, and then he finally said, I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to work. Right. But this is what they're saying. And anyway, that's kind of, they're saying, oh, it's forced on the whole 9 yards. Anyway, an accountability center is involuntary. Okay. You're not coming in and out. Randy Shumway, chairman of the State Homeless Service Board, said in an interview, Utah will end a harmful cultural of pervasiveness, he said, and guide homeless people towards human thriving. The problem is we have an issue with homelessness. It's not getting solved. But it's really interesting, some of the things, in this whole thing. But anyway, it says, when asked how people would enter the facility, he said law enforcement rescue teams would identify homeless people in the city and offer them a choice. So we could take you to court and you can go to jail because they've committed a crime. Or if you don't want to do that, we have a resource-rich alternative. Again, it's their choice to go. And if they go, they have to participate. And here's what the radical left is saying about this entire thing. It's what they did in World War II in Japanese detention camps, said Jessica of the National Homeless Law Center, a Washington advocacy group. This reads similar to rounding up Jews or other people like the Nazis did. Literally, this is what they're saying. Here's another quote. I believe this is by someone who is skeptical regarding the whole site. She says, okay, so straight up, this reminds me of a concentration camp, trying to get all those homeless in one area by the airport. I mean, would we be able to leave of our own free will? Now, there's still lots of questions unanswered. I would assume they're able to leave of their own free will. If they don't want to participate, fine, get out. You're not going to get the food and the shelter. Okay, but that's your choice. Done. But if you're going to stay there and get the food and get the shelter, then you should be participating. That's kind of how typical rehabs work. And I think that's what they're trying to do. And here's this as well. Digital Chew, is Utah building a new internment camp from the homeless? And they actually go into make the case that, yeah, it's like an internment camp. They go on to say, here's another one. A new homeless camp in the U.S. raises fears of forced labor. So there is yet another one saying, oh, they're going to force labor. Here's the deal. I do believe at this center that they're required to do work. And I think this is one of the best things that we could do for our homeless. If you're going to eat, you should be working. I personally believe, because I've been around the homeless, that you're incentivized to be homeless when everything is free. The more free stuff you get, the more homeless you'll maintain. In fact, there was one, I don't know if it was a place in California that did this trial where they were sending $750 right to the homeless people. Like, here's a $750 ticket. Of course, they spent it for the most part on their basic needs. Some of them spent it on drug and alcohol. But the deal was they started doing a little bit better. The problem is when you start giving money to homelessness, this doesn't incentivize them to get out of homelessness. It incentivizes them to stay in it because everything is for free. And more people will become homeless. Cue the reason that homelessness has exploded in California. Dun, dun, dun. Right? So I believe that in order to get some of the people off the street, hey, have them work a couple of hours for the food or whatever, or teach them jobs. That is the biggest thing. Let's get them to learn a job. And hey, look, let's just be honest. There's a lot of people who are homeless who have mental issues. And we need to have places for those people to go. Like those who can't mentally do work or can't mentally thrive and are just out there and they're, they're mentally incapable. Well, that's where something like this, I think, could come in and help, right? And we don't have things like that right now. So it's trial and error, of course. And if it doesn't pan out to what they say, then let's stop. Go back to the drawing board. But here's what the Utah Governor Cox has to say about this. This is on Utah News Dispatchment. Utah Governor Cox says homeless campus envisioned to fulfill Trump's order is a top priority. And he's pushing back against some of the things that were written in the New York Times and other articles. But here's what he says. The governor also spoke to the quote in the New York Times that was published on Wednesday, in which a woman experienced homelessness compared a rendering of the homeless camp to a concentration camp. And by the way, I want you to see this rendering. There's no barbed wire fence on the outside keeping people in. I believe there are locks on the outside, but there's no guard towers. There's no double wire fencing. This is obviously not a prison, right? And if you don't want to work and you don't want to do the rehabilitation, then you don't get the food. I mean, it's that simple. And I'm going to tell you, to be quite frank, honestly, if they're required to work in this place, I don't think many homeless people are going to go. Just a thought. It could be a waste unless they're faced with jail or that. That could be one of the only things that gets some of these to go. But it's your choice whether or not you go there. And if we commit a crime, we don't have alternatives, right? We go to jail and that's it. But these are homeless people. If they've done something wrong, committed a crime, they have options, right? But just to be honest, if they're required to work, there's going to be a lot of homeless people who say no. That's why I think this is still a shot in the dark. But anyway, this is what he said regarding that concentration camp quote. He said, he goes, this idea, that's it, he says, this idea that it's, compared to Nazi Germany, I don't understand that level of thinking, he said. It's just crazy to me. I mean, as if, Hitler were to, round up people who are dying on the streets and their own filth, addicted to drugs, and giving them support they need. Like, there's no comparison at all. And that's the thing. This is not a concentration camp. It is literally to help people who are addicted to drugs and addicted to whatever. It's to get them the help they need. Because homeless people can't go check themselves in to rehab and get that scot-free. It doesn't work that way. And this is working similar to a rehab center, right? And that's what this is. And there's yet this uproar. But he goes on to state, Cox said, on Wednesday, he said, comparison is not allowing people to die in our streets. And he said, and Cox said, compassion is not allowing people to die in our streets and letting public places become unsafe for them and others. There is no compassion in that at all. So what we have to do is provide the services that people need, and we have to hold people accountable. This is the social order. You don't get to just camp wherever you want. That cannot be a thing. If you don't have a place to stay, then we'll give you a place to stay. That's what we're doing, Cox said. What we're talking about is a small group of people who are unsheltered and who won't take help, who won't go to a shelter and are breaking lots of other laws. And that very small population, we have to help them. When you've got a needle in your arm, or you're on meth or fentanyl or whatever it is, you cannot make rational decisions. So in other words, he just wants to get people the help that they need. And this is at least a try. It may fall, may be a horrible shot in the dark that goes south. We may not have anybody choose to go to it. Who knows? I'm sure some will. But here's the deal. What we're doing now isn't working. Homelessness is exploding. Why not put options on the table? They're radical left, other than giving them everything for free, because every time you do that, it doesn't work. It makes it worse. We've already done trials on that. Oh, and you see that with socialism. The more money that you continue to give these people and the more you tax the people who are working, the worse things always become. That's why socialism is just a failure. Anyhow, can't wait to get your thoughts, comments, and concerns on all of this. I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.